The second to last layer of investment is reinforced with wire. This provides extra protection against cracking due to thermal shock when the metal is being melted. Over this is applied the last layer of investment. In total, 4 to 5 layers of investment are applied, and then the mould is put out to dry in the sun, or alternatively, lightly baked in a low burning fire. The furnace is custom built for each metal pour, as the size of the furnace is dependent on the size and number of moulds to be cast. Metal casters usually use a kiln where they are able to regulate the temperature, as it is important that the heat is not so fierce that it will crack the investment. Coke, a crude form of coal, is broken into usable-sized pieces. This will fuel the fire for the melting of the metal. The wax is melted out with a less intense fire made by burning cow dung. Melting the wax quickly can cause the mould to crack due to the heat quickly increasing the volume of the wax. The fire is started with some burning cow dung. Over this are placed broken lumps of coke. The mould is then placed on top of this, with the space around the mould packed further with coke. The end of the mould, which contains the wax figure, protrudes from the coke and is enclosed with bricks, thereby completing the circle of the furnace and preparing a space in which to burn the cow dung. While the metal may take several hours to become molten, the melting of the wax in the slower fire needs only about half an hour. The Dokra workers control the heat of the fire through the fuels they use and the way they construct the furnace. This is built facing the direction of any oncoming wind. Air vents are built into the lower front of the furnace, and these allow the oncoming wind to stoke the fire. On still days, it is necessary to fan the furnace to raise the temperature of the burning coke to the level needed to melt the brass. The brass can take from between 2 to 4 hours to be ready to pour, depending on the size of the work being cast. The pour is the most crucial and for many the most exciting part of the process, not to mention the most dangerous. Once the worker has decided that the molten metal is ready to pour, the red-hot mould is removed from the furnace. On hand is another worker with a bucket of water and some very moist clay to seal any cracks which may appear in the investment. When this does happen, the wet clay instantly hardens the molten metal and seals the leak. The culmination of this hard work is a short-lived, tense moment which could see either success or failure. As the mould is tipped upright, the molten brass enters the sprue hole, which feeds it into the empty space which the wax figure had occupied. It is a moment fraught with anticipation. Once the mould has been poured, it can either be put aside to cool or can be quenched slowly with water. At this stage, the brass around the core has hardened and can tolerate blows from a hammer to remove the investment. After the bulk of the investment is removed, the figure is wire brushed and then filed to remove any unwanted protrusions formed by leaks of brass from the figure into the investment. Because only one metal feeding sprue has been used and no gas vents except for the hole in the crucible, there is very little work involved in the clean-up stage of this technique, which may partly compensate for the high failure rate. The figure is basically complete when it is removed from the investment. The exposure of new technology to other cultures can lead to the perversion and eventual disappearance of traditional techniques. So far, the Dokra people have resisted the introduction of any new or different methods of casting. But today, with greater opportunities available through higher levels of education and increased exposure to a modern world, the children of the Dokra people may be more inclined to move away from tradition.
Change is very, very fast today. And I don't know, I think it's like another 50 years or so, if the craft is still alive, that generation of people will use yours and mine, my process of casting, and the whole thing will change.
Until that time, at least one member of that generation continues to show an interest in the craft of his forebearings, the Dokhra metal casters of West Bengal.